welcome to Story Time with me, Michelle. I hope you had a wonderful and beautiful day. Tonight's story is called A Place to Land, and it's about Martin Luther King Jr. and the speech that inspired a nation. So let's get into it. Martin Luther King. Oh yeah, sorry. Welcome to Story Time with me, Miss Sheila. I hope you have a wonderful and beautiful day. Tonight we're going to read the story called A Place to Land, Martin Luther King Jr. and the speech that inspired a nation. Oh, sounds interesting. Let's get into it, okay? Martin Luther King Jr. was once asked if the hardest part of preaching was knowing where to begin. No, he said, the hardest part is knowing where to end. It's terrible to be circling up there without a place to land. Interesting thought. But on August 27th, the night before the 1963 March on Washington, the strong and steady voice of the civil rights movement wasn't sure what to say or how to say it. So Martin did what great men do. He asked for guidance. Not from above, well, at least not at first, but in the lobby of the Willard Hotel where Abraham Lincoln once stood. A meeting of the minds took place. You have to preach, said Reverend Ralph. Most of the folks coming tomorrow are coming to hear you preach. Wyatt T. Walker agreed, but added, don't use the lines about I have a dream. You have used it too many times already. Bayard Rustin, who organized the march, wanted to hear about jobs, and more jobs, not dreams or scriptures. Clarence Jones, one of Martin's speechwriters, yes, even Martin had a speechwriter, suggested a marvelous metaphor, a fresh metaphor, one never heard before, a bad check. It meant the time had come for America to make good on her promise of equality and pay up, for her citizens of color had grown weary, frustrated, and angry. For justice long overdue. Reverend Walter agreed. Whatever you do, he said, keep that in there. For 2 hours, while these learned men raised their voices and pointed their fingers, Martin remained still. Part of Martin's greatness, he knew the importance of listening. That's good, because listening is so important. And when we listen not to respond, but to understand. That's another good little hint. Don't listen to jump in and right away and answer, but truly understand what the person is saying and hear them. It grew late, with a long night of writing still to come. Martin stood and excused himself. I am now going upstairs to my room to counsel with my Lord, he said. I will see you all tomorrow. Good man. His advisers fell silent, stunned, unsure if Martin would use any of their ideas in his speech the next day. Until tomorrow, then, they mumbled and retreated off to bed. Upstairs alone in his suite, surrounded by rough drafts and scribbled notes on yellow legal pads, Martin saw Rosa, Fannie Lou, Emmett, Megger, and the children of Birmingham, and so many others, their faces forever seared into his memory. Heroes all, chased by snarling police dogs, knocked off their feet by high-pressured water jets, arrested, beaten, shot, and hung, shocked and poked by cattle prods, their homes, schools, and churches burned in bombs. Even his house had been bombed. Midnight, writing, rewriting, rephrasing, rehearsing the lines out loud to an audience of four walls, changing the pacing, stretching the vowels, dividing words into syllables to create inner rhymes. It was like poetry, said Andrew Young, the soft-spoken pastor who counseled Martin throughout the night. Words crossed out 3, 4 times, searching for the perfect meaning and rhythm. 4 a.m. The handwritten speech finished, but not finished. Martin exhausted and surrendered to sleep. while at the same time up in Harlem in New York City on 125th Street, in Chicago and in Philadelphia, Cleveland and Memphis, crowds cheered, friends and relatives climbing aboard chartered buses and trains, on foot and on planes, singing "We Shall Overcome." So people were gathering, getting ready to head to Washington from all over parts of the States and I'm sure Canada as well. 8 a.m., hoping for a peaceful day, the shining city on the Potomac awoke to armed soldiers patrolling Constitution Avenue as if prepared for war against an invading army. Noon, women in flowing white dresses, gentlemen in pressed white shirts and snazzy fedoras, carrying signs of protest, carrying signs of hope, walked past the reflecting pool, watching the reflections silhouetted against the bluest of the pearl blue skies. They were going to march. 2:30 p.m. Martin kept refining, painting with the preacher's fine brush. A light shade of wisdom here, a darker shade of frustration there, the darkest shade of for whites only everywhere. Approaching 3:30, introduced as the moral leader of our nation, Martin stood at the podium, ready to lead his people to the promised land. He removed the folded white sheet of paper from the pocket of his black suit, speech typed and finished, but never finished, and placed it flat onto the lectern. Under the watchful marble eyes of the 16th President, Abraham Lincoln, Martin's rich baritone, God's trombone, rang out across the ages, gathering the glorious images of the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the proclamation, and wrapping them around the writings of Langston Hughes, the Bible, and spirituals he learned as a child, adding a sentence for emphasis, replacing a word for clarity, changes made in the moment to match the mood of the moment. The speech was good. The crowd applauded where it should, but Martin wanted more. He wanted more. He paused, but he couldn't say why, but others knew. Tell him about the dream. Mahalia Jackson, the queen of gospel, Martin's divine muse, who inspired Martin as Martin heard, uh, inspired her, heard what was missing, a passion of that Sunday morning sermon. Oh, thank goodness. Again she shouted, tell them about the dream, Martin, tell them about the dream. The Baptist preacher, son, grandson, and great grandson of Baptist preachers, carefully moved the script off to the side. Martin was done circling, the lecture was over, and he was going to church, his place to land, and taking a congregation of 250,000 along for the ride. Oh, how powerful and just exciting. 4 words spoken many times in Chicago, Detroit, Birmingham, and Albany, Georgia, but never as emotional as on this day, never intended to be heard on this day, not even written down for this day, not even once. And guess what those words were? Yes. I have a dream. Yes, oh, look at I'm even getting so teary eyed. Words he risked his life for and spent time in jail for, to convince Black America, white America, that walking arm in arm was the only way to save America. Martin's voice soared as sweetly as Mahila's from My Country 'Tis of Thee, to let freedom ring, concluding with the mighty crescendo. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we're free at last. Through the crowds and from sea to shining sea, tears roll down like a mighty stream, because the vision of a world where love triumphs over hate grabs hold of the heart and won't let go. This was the picture Martin painted. This was his gift further proof of his greatness. And look at black people and white people standing together, holding and fighting and marching for one right, for all to be equal. Yes. But now was not the time for congratulations. There was one more stop to make. 4 p.m. Whisked away to the White House, a house built by those enslaved, to meet the 35th President, John F. Kennedy, who had been slow to embrace the civil rights movement and tried to convince its leaders to cancel the march, now greeted those same men in the Oval Office, extending a handshake to all, but saving a special welcome for Martin. I have a dream. For some in the room, Kennedy's warm smile and handshake were bittersweet. 8 p.m. Returning to the Willard Hotel, where less than 24 hours earlier, voices were raised and fingers were pointed, the wise men gathered once again, this time to celebrate and to reflect upon the day that was. Leader, you swept today, Reverend told Martin. You preached today, John Lewis added. You was smoking. Clarence Jones had told Martin moments after the speech. The words were so hot, they were just burning off the page. Yes. Even just reading them now was so powerful. They all knew more battles lay ahead. Angry late night meetings in hotel lobbies, frantic phone calls, tears and blood to be shed, fighting every inch to cross a bridge to make Martin's dream come true. So there they are. And those battles continued to be fought. But that night brought optimism and laughter, for they all agreed. Martin stepped up to the lectern and stepped down on the other side of history. Yes, for civil rights, for all to be seen and equal. Oh, I so hope you enjoyed this powerful inspiring story of the night before Martin Luther King did that incredible speech, I Have a Dream, and on the day of. I truly, truly hope this impressed you and inspired you, and that it will make you dream and keep doing what your calling is and be a bright light for others to see that we are all equal in God's eyes and that we all need to be living in this world and helping one another. Yes, that's why God made us to work towards one another to have a life of harmony. Until next time with me, Miss Sheila, I hope you have a wonderful and beautiful evening and go keep shining your beautiful light. Take care now.